1972, a major conference was held in Honolulu when I was still at Berkeley in honor of Wang Yangming's 500th anniversary of his birth. So his dates were 1472 to 1529, more than 500 years ago. Zhu we celebrated the death of Zhu Xi, 800 years of his death a few years ago. So we're talking about people a long time ago. And yet, for those who are involved in Confucian studies, Wang Yangming is still considered one of the major shapers of the continuous development of Confucian humanism. Often is characterized as dynamic idealism. Idealism sometimes is understood as a form of thinking with emphasis on the ideal. So there's always the separation between idea and practice. And one of Wang Yangming's very distinctive feature is the unity of knowledge and action. Normally we consider the unity of knowledge and action as a remedial effort, corrective effort, because we put too much emphasis on theorizing. So practice became important. But Wang Yangming insists there's something a little bit difficult to understand. The unity of knowledge and action, meaning as the moment you think, the moment you're involved in theorizing, or the moment you're involved in discussion, you're already involved in practice. And any form of practice, if it is really practice, it involves cognitive, in other words, intellectual understanding of what you do. The two are inseparable in terms of substance. Now, some people say you have to know before you can act correctly. Wang Yangming would say you never know unless you practice. Even in scientific inquiry, it is not something that you first understand the phenomena out there and then try to appreciate it. Maybe eventually you'll be able to make use of it. You know, the distinction between basic research and application. We normally think in terms of knowledge and action. Knowledge begins and action follows. Wang Yangming reverses that, not only reverses that process, he identifies that process as totally a form of unity. In one area, it's not difficult to understand. That is the difference between you know that and you know how. Normally, if you know something out there, like it snowed two weeks ago, and that is knowledge, that doesn't involve action. But if you know how, you know that and you know how. If you know how, it involves the internalization of skills. Therefore, it's a form of action. If you learn to play an instrument, that is always how to do it, and always involves practice. If you involve in reading, it is not simply a form of knowing. Reading is a form of practice. You never learn if you use only your eyes. You have to learn with all your organs. You have to learn orally. You have to hear. Sometimes you have to feel it, or in terms of your body. And unless you feel it in terms of your body, in fact, and seeing itself is a transformative act. It transforms you if you try to understand really in the profound sense. Wang Yangming would say, even if you see things out there, it is not simply a perception. There's certain kind of action involved. This is based upon his very interesting theory that everything, human beings, animals, plants, and minerals, everything is involved in some dynamic energy. And whenever you encounter something, there's always interchange. There will also interplay. And we can now understand it in terms of human interactions. Right? You cannot interact with anyone without being affected. The best way to understand it is to say if you know someone, and that knowing involves first recognition of the face. And then only through conversation you'll be able to really know the person. Sometimes you stay together for a long time, you can know the person well. And when the person becomes your friend, that knowledge is considered intimate self-knowledge. It is impossible that you know someone who's not willing to be known. You can never make a friend if the person is not interested in becoming your friend. And that interaction is certainly a form of action. You want to understand, which means that you have to open your heart and mind for understanding. And therefore you have to understand yourself in reference to someone before you can say that you know someone. And that knowledge is interactive. Wyoming will go further to say that's true with the relationship between human being and animal. We know that, a pet. But from Wyoming's point of view, any kind of animal, there's even interaction between plants and humans, and even minerals and humans. And of course, this depends upon whether you accept this basic theory or not. We're not going to talk about it today, but 2 days later, we would talk about a very interesting and complicated idea of forming one body with heaven and earth and myriad things. We form one body with all things. So let me begin with the diagram in the back. There are 4 dimensions to Confucian humanistic thinking. And these 4 dimensions are integrated. If you want to think about it, you have to accept the interactive models, all 4 of them. If you fail to understand any one of them, your understanding of Confucian humanism is impoverished, or at least it's partial. The first, as I already noted, it's very easy to understand, is the interaction with the person, with yourself, and community, meaning human relationships. And that understanding is basic to Wyoming's notion about the unity between action and praxis. In terms of his own experience, this is related to the whole question about self-cultivation. In his own experience, he studied Buddhism when he was young, and also he studied Taoism. And Buddhism and Taoism are all related to the cultivation of the self. From the Buddhist point of view, you really have to detach yourself from everything. And the more you detach yourself, the more you're in the path of being a Buddhist, eventually to be able to enter into nirvana